Before we begin sewing our pattern pieces together, we need to actually transfer some marks from our pattern to the fabric. So we only need one of our fashion fabric pieces. You want to lay it with the wrong side up, and then put your pattern down on top of it. Make sure that your pattern is centered where it needs to be. That's 5/8 there. Make sure I am 5/8 over here. Yep. Yep, right there. Okay. I'm gonna put a pattern weight along the bottom. What we are transferring are these marks right here. In your sewing kits, you have some papers that look kind of like this. This is called tracing paper. What you have in your kits is a chalk-based tracing paper, and if you were to rub your hands over the color, it would come off on your fingers. What I have here is actually a wax-based tracing paper. I like it better because it doesn't leave a residue on my fingers, but the way that it works is exactly the same. So you need a piece of your tracing paper in a color that contrasts with your fashion fabric so you can actually see the marks. So if you were using like a blue fabric, you wouldn't want to use the blue tracing paper. You're also going to use this tool with your tracing paper. This is called a tracing wheel. So the way that we're going to use this is with your fabric and pattern laid out like this. You're going to lift the top edge of your pattern, slide your tracing paper between the pattern and the fabric with the color facing your fabric. Make sure that the tracing paper completely covers this section. And all you're going to do is take your tracing wheel and push down hard on your pattern and trace these lines. So we've got a solid dark black line here in the middle. We want to trace that. And then we want to trace the square that goes around it. I'm actually going to kind of extend out a little further on the bottom here. I like to make sure that I'm doing this straight, because it can be really difficult to roll this straight. I like to do short back and forth strokes to keep me on my line. You can see if you have traced a section of your pattern because your tracing wheel has little divots in it, and it will actually make an impression on your paper. And if you push too hard, you can actually cut paper with this. Okay, we're gonna leave our pattern in place because we wanna check and make sure that it transferred well enough that we can see. Okay, I need to go back over this section a little bit because this is where my paper overlaps, and it didn't quite show up as visually well as I would like it to be. Because we left this part of our pattern in place, when I lay this back down, everything's back in place. So I'm gonna push a little harder right here because that is where my paper is doubled, and I need to put a little bit more pressure to get the tracing color to transfer. Okay, that's better. I'm gonna take my pattern out of the way. So there is a dotted line right here. It can be a little tricky to see on camera. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my pencil, and I do want you to do this as well because the tracing paper you have is made of chalk, and chalk rubs away really easily. So I'm gonna take my pencil and my ruler and make this line darker. So I'm lining my ruler up with the edge of the dotted line. Just make sure it's dark enough that you can see your markings. I'm going in really dark here so you guys can see this on camera. There's also a line in the middle that doesn't quite go to the bottom here. And I want to trace that all the way up as well. Okay, so when you're done, you should have a very narrow rectangular box that goes all the way up to this cut edge. I want you to extend the lines up to the cut edge. There will be a line in the middle of that rectangle that does not connect at the end, it stops about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch before it gets to the bottom here. And I'm actually gonna do a little cross at the bottom there to see that better, okay?